There's some D's.
Typically, where's your population, your school, your jobs, and that kind of a thing. So we have that in the plan. And we looked at how we can improve tourism, housing, land use. What do you have? Echo. Wastewater, roads, internet, and that kind of a thing. Okay. So great things are happening. I just wanted to show this slide to you because this makes me very excited about Luzerne. It should make you excited. The music center, for which there's a bigger drawing up here that John brought, is very cool. That's going to be located for programming, and it's going to be located in the back of the parking lot on that property. The Luzerne Youth. I'm sorry. So the music center, this is the new museum and recital hall. And that's very exciting because they are just growing and growing. And I mentioned Utopia, and if you haven't been up there, I think you should, because they'll send guests up there. It's really such an unusual place. And it has international fame. And so people are coming from all over the world here. And it makes for a great opportunity to host those students, those people down and make them one of our partners. By the way, up there at their main building, everything like Luzerne up there. All the chamber stuff, everything like that. So they already are a good partner. Then Meadow Artisan Cheese and the Hitching Post Pub. New destination visit. Phenomenal. Meaning people just go there, just come off the Northway and come here just to have that experience, right? And there's not even any goats there. Right? They're coming for the food and then I don't know, maple syrup and whatnot. So very cool things are happening here. And by the way, they're not necessarily happening other places. You're very, very lucky to have some renaissance going on right here. So the community vision, really we looked at, we don't have to create something new. You have a recipe with all the right ingredients here. Just need to make them, you need to tweak them for this century, and it's where we are today. So we're looking at building a sustainable year-round economy from the small town atmosphere, the high quality of life that you have here, the exceptional assets that are all around you, and the strong sense of community that you have. Again, another element that other places do not have, right? Corinth has many ingredients that you do, some ingredients, they don't have that quality that you have here. They just don't have that same sense here and strong sense of community. They used to. So we want to weave the community's assets into a strategy that that basically builds on heritage tourism, right? I mean, those are, you don't have to like bring in new stuff. Like I said to somebody the other day, you're not going to be a gambling location, right? You already you have so many great things that you want to build on those. And the success of this marketing approach really depends on being able to get a destination business downtown. That's really, you're aware of Crossroads up in Chestertown. And what's the other? Hoss's Country Store in Long Lake. Anybody been there? Great place, right? Yeah. One. Yes. Strange name, but phenomenal place. And Crossroads as well. A blend of Adirondack stuff and and a deli counter with incredible food, right? Incredible food. Goals, priority projects. All right, the goals, what we came up with, and many of these do come forward from the 2010 plan. Stimulate business development, modernize the zoning code, encourage young families, improve the overall infrastructure. That's just general. Build a distinctive and sustainable tourism strategy. Meet the recreation needs of residents and visitors. Preserve and protect the historic and cultural resources. And improve the condition of the lakes, streams, rivers, and forests. Those are your big goals. Okay.
Oh,
All right, so what we're going to present are really just the big ideas and not a lot of the small ones, because it's a lot to talk about. It's bigger ideas. And the first one is prepare a detailed hamlet strategy, revitalization strategy that includes a business attraction and retention plan. So this goes farther than the 2010 plan. It includes a market analysis that will illustrate the goods and services that are in demand here and complement the existing businesses that are already succeeding here. Provide a step-by-step action plan that identifies our alternatives for the development of these dilapidated buildings that are downtown, underutilized, underappreciated, vacant. So really that means digging in, going deep, and figuring out, matching different activities and projects that could be related to those buildings. And then how do you a plan to actually move forward with that? Actively recruit a mix of retail, restaurants, and services in businesses here. Okay. So we have an implementation strategy for this, and every one of our projects does have an implementation strategy. Gotta have legs. You can't just like put it out there and then bye-bye. Nothing will ever happen. So we've got here, hire a person or consulting firm to carry out the project over a 5-year term. That means either the town has to finance that, or we have to find funding that will actually pay a person to carry out this stuff. Nobody in town is going to be able to do that on their own. There's assistance from Warren County Tourism and the Tourism Council, but Drew has outlined the New York Main Street Technical Assistance Funding Program is probably the best funding source.
yes, so the New York Main Street Technical Assistance Grant is a program that prepares your municipality for targeting revitalization fund for your downtown area. It assists you in the process of reimagining what it can look like. And then the next step is ultimately to apply for either a anchor project or a target area renovations grant, which is basically a grant to assist building owners with renovations of their buildings. This is a grant that's typically paid for 100% by the building owners and portions of their renovation projects, then gets reimbursed, but only after making sure that it complies with all local, state, and the plan that you set forth for your community or you hope to achieve.
So you can imagine there's lots of parts and pieces to that. It's complicated, but if you don't enact it now, it will never happen. And those buildings will continue to be a dark spot in the downtown. Okay. Prepare a Main Street plan for a streetscape plan for the downtown, and that follows up on our walkabout that we did this summer in June. And we noticed we have different ideas for where there should be street lights, bike racks, better crossings, you know, that kind of a thing. And we want to make it all season so that, and also handicap accessible. And we noticed places that were not navigable by somebody who was using a wheelchair or a walker. So we made some notes on that. We have to take that to the next step. Another idea is to extend the Riverside Trail. Everybody been on the Riverside Trail? Well, the Riverside Trail abruptly ends, and it's kind of weird, and I think that even if you were to just finish it, bring it back to the parking lot at the folk school, and it would be fine, but there's also the idea of extending the Riverside Trail all the way along the bank. And most of the, to the bridge, to the Bridge of Hope. And the, there's really just one private owner, as I recall. The rest is public on some level. So, could it be done? Yeah, but it's gonna take some work to figure that out and whether it could actually be engineered. And then we thought at the other end, at the Bridge of Hope, there is a parcel that is town owned. Maybe there could be a viewing platform put there. So you can imagine this, people go and they look at over the bridge, the falls, there's nowhere to really go, kind of awkward, right? There's no place to go. And I remember Hadley had one that was planned on their side, that never happened. You could do something small on this side. You have to think big about these things, or they'll never happen. Something could happen here, and it'd be very cool if you can imagine if it was connected all the way down to the folk school. I don't know. Kind of a nice idea, I think. Design guidelines for the buildings downtown. Lamplighter. One of the most beautiful buildings there is. But that's just something that we wanted to consider and throw out there. Okay. All right, so the update the land use regulations. Well, this has been going on for a while, and the town really does need, has identified many places in the zoning code and regulate other regulations where it needs to be updated. There's the code needs to be updated, the definitions. There are places in town where properties are subdivided by 2 different zoning districts. I'm not saying that all that can be resolved, but we'll look at that a little more deeply. The zoning map needs to be updated to reflect new zoning density change. There's a couple of properties. One is at Lake Pinar, and the other just up here just down here behind the church, which several people have put out some ideas for development. And for reasons of density, they don't seem to be able to move them forward. So taking another look at those lands would be helpful. It wasn't part of our duty on this committee to actually resolve that. Whether we should support changing the density one way or the other. So we didn't, but we are supporting that it gets looked at in this initiative to change the zoning. Other key recommended actions are to regulate short-term rentals. And I think you're all aware that this town board has been working on this very hard, many meetings. And I even met with the town of Lake George on their experience. So we're supporting short-term rental regulations, whatever that should be, whatever that turns out to be once the committee is finished their work. Let's see, adopt a climate smart community pledge as a municipal resolution. This allows you to join the program and become a registered climate smart community. That sounds, whatever, but what it does is it does give you access to grant money. All right. Grant money for things like helping you change the zoning regulations, money to help fix the flooding that's down on the Riverside Trail and any flooding issues that you might have other places. So it's something to take a look at because it is a big pile of money that is often not entirely taxed. So
not entirely tapped and also can really contribute to saving the community bottom line, things like converting streetlights to LEDs can really, get quite a bit out of the industry, electric use.
Great. All right, you're up.
All right, so housing is part of your community infrastructure. You all live in houses, and we're all part of the community because of the houses that you have here. So part of our assessment is identifying specific needs within your existing housing stock. Some of our demographics identified that almost 77% of people living in your community are rent burdened, and something like a third of all people are mortgage burdened, meaning that almost 30% of their total income is going directly towards their mortgage or rent. So, some of the things that we need to assess is how we can sustain that housing stock so that you are an aging population, our demographics show that. So what happens when, you're retired and you're on a fixed income and you can no longer, fix your roof? $20,000 bill, something like that to fix your roof, and a fixed income, that's pretty impossible. What happens if your foundation cracks or you have other critical deficiencies in your house, including sometimes those little pants have non-tube wiring. So one of the first things that we have recommended under our housing is conducting a needs assessment. A needs assessment is generally a survey, either by direct observation, called a windshield survey. You literally look at the window and say, maybe there's visual critical deficiencies, including leaky roof or cracked foundation. You kind of tell sometimes when sometimes people have old non-tube wiring or less than 110 amp service. So you conduct a windshield survey and then just ask people in your community about what specifically they need in order to help sustain their housing. And if you define a sufficient need within your community, the next step could be applying the housing rehabilitation grant. These are housing funds that are administered through New York State Office of Community Development. And the specific program that I recommended in this place is the CDD Community Development Block Grant. And this is money directly to homeowners. It is a declining loan balance. So basically, if you were to receive $50,000 in assistance over a period of 5 years, you have a lien on your home, and that eventually goes away. With an aim of making sure that people can stay in their home, that their homes are healthy, safe, and it's the needs of the individuals that's living in there, including certain accessibility features for disabled persons or elderly people or others that need such features. So the CDBG program is a way that you can do that. And the CDBG program is the specific one that I recommended because within the budget, you can supply both your administration and your program delivery. So the cost to the municipality to operate such a program is actually almost nothing. Actually very cheap. Except for the grant writing part, which is also reasonably affordable, but part of our plan. We also want to incentivize affordable housing development with a pilot program. For you that are not familiar with the pilot program, pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, and this is an incentive program that you would basically offer to developers who wish to develop housing within your community, whether it be commercial, mixed use, or individuals. But if you want to identify a certain area where you want to promote growth, you say, this particular area, I want to promote growth. Therefore, people who develop in that area, we will provide tax abatement for a period of time. And that can either be funded through a grant program, or it could be funded through the county, or simply have the municipality defer its tax assessment on that. So that's a way to incentivize programs. And the Warren Washington County IDA does in fact administer one that encompasses your area. We also wanted to take a look at our New York Forward and our New York Main Street program. The New York Forward and New York Main Street programs will assist mixed use buildings. So if you have commercial residential mix, that could assist in those types of developments where they exist. So there's an overlap between commercial development as well as the rental market that coincides. And we also talked about the opportunity for USDA. USDA does offer both low interest loans to potential home buyers, first time home buyer programs, and other incentivized rehabilitation programs, although generally for seniors and very low income seniors.
And isn't it true that Corinth is involved in many of those programs?
Yes, the Bobby Reed's been administering housing programs in the town of Corinth for about 15 years. We for many years operated the housing home improvement program, which assisted residential single family owners with various rehabilitation costs. And more recently, they had switched their program from only 5-to-1. So there's in fact a mobile manufactured home replacement program, which assisted significantly dilapidated mobile homes on private land, and assists with full replacements. That's like that. So other recommendations that we have in the area of community service is develop a plan to address cell and internet service gaps. Particularly when we are looking to attract tourists, when we're looking to attract new residents, new businesses. These are all the very key parts of their infrastructure to develop that for them. Particularly as we start looking at younger people that are working from home, they need to have access to those services in order to live and grow and with you in your community. We also looked at conducting a feasibility study to explore the construction of a senior housing project on the area, actually just behind our building here. This was identified as a potential area for development, and we recommend that you explore the feasibility of whether either a private developer could be attracted to develop that property, or you could develop a strategy by which you could provide a great way for people who are seniors living in your community that can maybe no longer take care of their home to then stay here in your community. Otherwise, a lot of the people who can no longer maintain their home or can no longer afford their home might go to a place like Queensbury, Glens Falls, Clifton Park, or Malta, where they have senior housing apartments and they could live with assisted living and various other facilities that are within their reach. Ideally, you'd be able to keep these people here in your community, the people that have lived in your community. You don't want to see them go. They've been invested, you care about them. We would love to see them stay here, but whether that site is developable or not, it is something that a feasibility study will need to assess, as well as funding priorities and options for that to happen. We also wanted to explore providing electric vehicle charging stations at the Lake Luzerne High Park facilities. So electric charging vehicle stations, such as the one that are at the Adirondack Boat School. Again, you are tapping into that climate smart pledge and the opportunity for funding to make those things happen, and at the same time tapping into a new market. Young people who are generally concerned about their environment and looking to interact more deeply with it, hopefully here in Lake Luzerne. We also talked about the opportunity to approach Hudson Headwaters on the feasibility to recruit a health center for Lake Luzerne. I understand that they provide a trailer, they come out on a pretty regular basis, particularly here to the senior center and they're here. But if you were to have a medical emergency or to need to see a doctor, most of you are probably going up to Warrensburg or going over down to Glens Falls, and that's not quite as convenient. Again, our demographic data shows that you have an aging population. How do you make that a little bit, this place more home to them so that they don't have to travel quite as far? There's actually one of the comments that we got in a lot of our surveys that it's quite a distance to travel for most of your basic needs and necessities. So at Hudson Headquarters, which establish a headquarters here, new commercial opportunities, new job opportunities, and cater to the base of your population. We also talked about contacting the Southern Adirondack Child Care Networks to assess opportunities to increase child care options in the community. Guys, weirdest thing about demographic data, I don't believe it, but it actually says that there are 0 people between ages of 18 to 25 living in your community. 0. I don't think that's true. I think it's a skewed demographic because they're also probably less likely to respond to a census record or anything like that. But how many people do you know between the ages of 18 and 24, or do they leave after they graduate high school and move to Glens Falls or something like that? In order to attract young people, to attract new and young families, to promote the sustainability of your community and stimulate your schools and your local economy, then childcare is certainly an essential part of that service. I'm not familiar with the daycare, at least licensed daycare within your community. And I tell you right now, I've got a parent of two children under age 4. I can't keep them at home. What am I going to do with them? So I need to work a job. The wife needs to work a job. And that means that we need childcare and we need to live in a place where that's accessible and feasible.
I'm gonna go back to the Hudson headwaters. I don't want you to think that it's infeasible here. Because you have to think about the fact that the closest facility, I know there's one, it's not Hudson headwaters in Corinth. Yeah. But they're busy, right? I think you told me they're super busy. They're over capacity. So if you think about, there's a little tiny one up in Bolton Landing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. There's nothing in Lake George. Warrensburg has it, but Warrensburg is always full. It's astonishing. You can't get a dental appointment, and they're very, very busy. So these health centers have really done a terrific job in providing services to people in rural areas. But this is a pretty good spot for one. And people would come from Lake George down here. I'm quite sure they would. So keep it, don't be dismissive of it like it sounds like it's too hard. Because I think that could actually happen with some discussions with the executive staff there.
Me too? All right.
Yeah, you did.
Cool. So, the Route 9 and corridor study, this is one that during our survey got a little bit of some mixed results. But we wanted to recommend developing a comprehensive corridor study for the Route 9 and corridor that identifies transportation needs or deficiencies and addresses improvement for vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and snowmobilers. 9N is the main artery through the community. And for most travelers, including you yourself and people coming from afar, it's going to be the main way in which they're going to enter and leave your community. And it also makes a pretty big impression. I mean, I always know when I enter Lake Luzerne because I know I'm crossing the river, and once I get on the other side of the river, congratulations on the Warren County town of Lake Luzerne. But how do you welcome people into your community? How do you direct them? Little side note, I used to be associated with the scenic byway. And one of the things that we taught scenic byways is that it's that split moment where a person needs to make a decision that's the most dangerous for them. And when they have a moment of indecision, it's actually quite dangerous for them as well as pedestrians, because you're unsure what you're supposed to do and are more likely to then have to make that split second decision, which gives you less opportunity to assess the dangers. So wayfinding is important to this. How do you find your downtown area? If 9N is your main artery that is part of your main street, but then how do you make your way up Mill Street and into your main hamlet area, which we hope to develop commercial opportunities. So we want to develop what we call complete street approach that enables safe access for people who need them. So this complete streets includes the signage, pedestrian access, cross, as well as sidewalks for safe people, particularly within that area, say within the area of the school. It's going to be really and include a set of signage design guidelines that identifies and create a distinct identity for Fourth Lake, the Lake North settlements, and the Lake Luzerne Hamlet and Town Hall to 9N and the Bridge of Hope. So think of this as how are you welcoming people to the community? How are they going to find their way once they get here? How do you have a consistent message of, I know that I see this sign and this is the way that I need to go, and recognize it as you are within your community. One of the biggest things that came away for me from the community survey is, what is your community identity? How do you reinforce it through the way that people enter and interact and find their way throughout your community? So that's a large part of what we hope to achieve within the 9N corridor study that theoretically could be paired with your Main Street assessment.
You can keep going.
Please. So one of the main things that we talked about is develop a formal use management and maintenance plan for the Tourist Information Center on Lake Luzerne. You guys know what I'm talking about? That's that painted pony. It's kind of a little dilapidated. There's now like a kind of nicer pull off on the other side of the road, which it's kind of weird. It has the high rock, but then it has 2 picnic tables and maybe a little thing. Well, that's your northern gateway into your community. People are coming from the north down 9N into your community, whether they're going to Nettle Meadow or passing through on their way to Corinth. Hopefully they'll stop staying and spend some money. But when they come through, how are you welcoming them? So this is a great opportunity to capture them, let them know about the things in your community, and then find new ways to direct them outwards. So this would be a great opportunity for an information destination that includes maps of your communities and maybe some of the tours, detours, opportunities for your community. One of my favorite things, and I tell this to people all the time, is my favorite tourismism is the 3 Ds of tourism. The goal of tourism is to divert, detain, and divest. You want to get them off their main route into your community, detain them for as long as possible so you can take all the money. That's your goal. You want to keep them here as long as possible. So by developing this as an entryway, not when you've already passed through your community or at the southern gateway, such as your Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center or something like that, and they're on the other side of the community. Let's capture them when they're coming in. Yeah, let's see their heads on the bus. Continue to seek grants and other funding to implement the town's water system rehabilitation program, including the water line replacements and replacements of the water tank. So some of your critical infrastructure is needing either improvements or upgrades or doesn't exist. So feeding that critical infrastructure and finding state aid to assist with those projects is really critical. Develop a long-range capital improvement plan. So of course, just like flood waters and sewer waters and everything else, you need to manage your stormwater. You have to install all the right places, or to destroy your roadways, flood your basements, and cause some pretty serious damage. So how are you going to do your stormwater management and how make sure it goes and gets place, and that your infrastructure improvement, because when stormwater infrastructure is clogged, damaged, or otherwise, is when you're going to get major flooding or major issues include blocked roadways. And a community like this, 9N can be closed down for an extended period of time. That can be a real challenge to some people. Review the findings of the 2006 municipal sewer feasibility report and newly assess the feasibility of the town developing a small sewer district for the Hamlet area. So within your Hamlet area, you have a concentration of people, as well as the potential for undersized or undercapable, or some instance maybe non-existent sewer water collection. And for a community that is centered around tourism, and the beauty of your lakes and your environment is very concerning if there's any fear for there being sewer water or sewer drainage that is leaching your lakes and rivers. That can be a really major concern. You know, the presence of E. coli and closed can be a major hindrance. So this plan needs new eyes. You need new plan. You need to figure out how you can implement this in a stronger way, or whether it is necessary or there are alternatives to doing so, including assessing the ability or providing new ordinance to assess the capacity of individual septic system, whatever they may be. And hopefully there's something there. I mean, if you go up in the lake area and into the Hamlet, some of those houses or some of those old camps, who knows if they're just the home ground. So that is something that certainly needs to be assessed. Assess the state of the fire and ambulance services and the need for a secondary firehouse. Price and identify financing alternatives for a new ambulance and upgrade to existing firehouse. So you need to reassess your emergency services. I will say in your survey, most people believe that your fire and ambulance service was adequate. However, the second most responsive were, well, I've never needed them, and hopefully I never need them. So I take that as resigning maybe. Again, this is a thing that you would regularly assess. So we're not saying that you need to go out and do this thing tomorrow, because maybe now you think it's okay, but you regularly need to be assessing your emergency capacity for various rescues, forest fires, and various other things that may arise, and your ability to respond to those types of things. Just after a grant presentation at say, the buzzword here is I conducted a risk assessment and found I those things. You need to continuously conduct that risk assessment to determine where your needs are and opportunities to fill that gap. Identify our areas that experience flooding and investigate the climate smart grant program to fund special mitigation projects. Floodwater mitigation is going to be a major concern as we start to see changes of waterways, including our floodplain management, including some homes that maybe are within our 100-year floodplain that is now kind of our 50-year floodplain, sometimes they're 10-year floodplain. So again, how do we respond to the changes to our environment? And an ongoing process, we need to regularly revisit it and say, geez, that area didn't flood last year, but maybe it's going to flood, and you need to, again, assess and make sure that you take corrective action before it becomes a critical issue. Adopt a complete street policy to provide guidance on pedestrian, bicyclists, and transit improvements throughout the town. This is a thing that we came up again and again. We'll probably talk about it in just another minute about bicycle and pedestrian access. A lot of people are very interested in bicycling, and how do you make it safe for them? A lot of cyclists within this area may not feel safe in an area that doesn't have broader shoulders. And they need to run up against traffic that's 55 miles per hour, or around windy, bendy roads, or roads that have quite a bit of debris on the side. So again, by adopting that complete streets program and the set of guidelines, ensuring that there are sidewalks, adequate shoulders, and things of that sort, including drainage, that's larger plan to become a more complete pedestrian access and pedestrian safety. And place additional digital speed signs in the key locations on Route 9N, particularly on the curve on the south of the business district. Speeding is an issue. Biggest thing to do is place fear in them that somebody's watching. And when you have a big digital sign that says your speed is, they're much more likely to slow down, even if it isn't an enforcement action.
And that would typically be covered in the Route 9 corridor study.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you notice that some of our strategies are all overlapping, so one feeds into the next, one feeds into the next, and hopefully similarly to that, the comprehensive plan increase success, which encourages people to pursue even further and further and further. So you accomplish all your goals and we come back 10 years from now and say, cool, we did all of these things, what's next? Branding and marketing. So develop a comprehensive branding and marketing plan that weaves together arts, culture, entertainment, and outdoor resources of Lake Luzerne into a distinctive brand that attracts new businesses, residents, and visitors. Now, I understand that I just spent all day yesterday going through your survey results, and I'll tell you, there's some jaded people, so it's fun reading. And it's just the nature of everything. Some of my staff is going to come to this person complaining about access to their driveway. They answered every question to every question on. But tourism is actually one of those things. And there seems to be a dichotomy here where there is a mix of people within your community. And you say, gee, I really like things the way they are. And I don't necessarily want them to change. I like that it's a quiet town. I like that it's quaint. And that, you know, it's free and it's open and it is all the things that it is. And, you know, I don't necessarily enjoy when it gets overcrowded, when there's people from the outside that come in. And then there's people saying, oh, geez, that's how I pay the bills and that's what I really need. And this is what feeds our economy and it's really important. So in this branding and marketing plan, I want to emphasize that the idea is to target what we refer to as sustainable tourism practices, which focuses on emphasizing the assets to invite other people to enjoy them without distortion. So it's balance. You want people, and you don't want too many people. You want a tour bus of 50 people? No, we're in the You want a carload of 4 people, maybe 10 times over the course of the day? Sure, that'd probably be really great from your bottom line. It would create new businesses for you and create a real economic driver, or a continued economic driver, since it is the base of your economy. So part of that is create a town-market guideline and campaign elements to promote the area as a year-round destination, particularly for arts, recreation, and exceptional beauty, There was a part of the first wilderness heritage reporter study on a branding initiative, and it came up with this tagline where friends and rivers meet. And I think that's pretty clever. I like it a lot. It seems to me like great gathering place for family. Speaks to the history and culture, which is the confluence of rivers and all the things that came with that. I really enjoy that. So how do you take that and take it a step further and turn it into an interpretive brand that can be developed through your regional partners, such as the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor, which is administered through Warner County Planning Department. So you can take this and build upon it, but make sure that you are addressing the target audience that you wish to achieve. You know, do you want, people who are going to party on the lake and drink beer? Maybe not, but or you want a family of young kids and, mom and dad want to go out to a restaurant afterwards and, have their kids play and take a hike and do these things. Sure you do. That's great. That's a lot about what your community is all about. But really picking up on this brand as Adventure Row with plentiful river padding, tubing, floating, rafting and canoeing, embrace that you are an Adirondack community and that unlike many other communities, we do have abundance of recreational activities, particularly for the outdoor enthusiasts. Now let's pull it all together, create it as a package so that we are inviting people for the things that are important for you so that you're managing your visitors and you're putting them in the places you want them to, maybe keep them working places you got. So part of your implementation strategy is to hire a professional marketing consultant or company and consider applying for Empire State Development Market New York grant by partnering with the towns of Hadley, Corinth, and Thurman on this initiative on regionally cooperative tourism. So a whole that is greater than the sum of your partner, their history, culture, and that with your neighboring communities, particularly along the Upper Hudson River, and how do you coalesce all those things into a initiative that brings you as part of a broader destination. So even if you could say, well, geez, Lake Luzerne doesn't really have any place to eat, so how long can I reasonably keep people in my community before they have to go out to go do something? Well, if you address that with the body of your marketing initiative and say, here's an itinerary, you're going to start here and you're going to maybe go up to Warrensburg and get something to eat. Guess what? The next day you're coming back. So how do you address that within the body of your plan and to come together so that you aren't here hiring yet another professional to do another thing, but creating a position that's shared and therefore much more impactful and less of a burden to the community.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. I think you've said a lot of this. One of the things we talked about was maybe a performance stage in the park, the Pavilion Park, which I called Bicentennial Park. Is that wrong?
Well,
It's Butler Park. Is there a Bicentennial Park?
so
I got it wrong. But anyway, it is you have the pavilion there, but it also would be great to have a stage there for performances. And interestingly enough, the fellow that owns Painted Pony got in touch with me the other day, and he's very interested in starting a theater company here. And it's interesting. I sort of pushed it in the direction of talking to people from Corinth because they had such a successful one for so many years there. And maybe it could be a regional effort. Anyway, it's an interesting idea. Whether that a performance stage over in Pavilion Park would be appropriate, because now you're talking. I'm just about to talk about a new playground, so now you're talking about a lot more things going on in Butler Park. So I'm going to show you that.
and I will say, we actually refer to food trucks a couple of times throughout the plan. There's a reason for that, and that is that, the food trucks exist out there as long as they have their Department of Health certificate for Warren County, they could travel pretty freely. within reason. And, our hope is that by demonstrating the market capacity for your municipality, that will encourage that person to establish a brick and mortar. So you demonstrate your capacity and their ability to make money in your community. So we think that's a great segue to literally the most important thing that I took away from all of this planning process is that everybody really wants a restaurant.
But is it chicken or egg, right? I mean, you've got to create the right atmosphere for people to come, day trippers to Lake Luzerne, so that generates somebody going, I think I'll start a restaurant. It doesn't say, it's not a person who says, I think I'll start a restaurant and sit here and wait for somebody to discover us. It just doesn't work that way. People don't get into business to lose money. Get into business to make money. So I think strengthening all of these parts and pieces that we're talking about will help encourage people to come and build a restaurant or take over another building and have another restaurant plus food trucks. Everybody loves food trucks.
I think the survey said they want both the chicken and the egg because they need to serve breakfast and then dinner.
I think. All right, so I just want to show you this map. We're going to go off into recreation, but this is a regional economic development initiative through Warren County called the First Wilderness Trail. And I did this work. I started from Corinth, from the beautiful reservoir in Corinth is where this starts. And then it comes up and ends up in Tahoe, New York. So it's a 100-mile trail. And it's supposed to be a wilderness trail. So it's supposed to be off-road. Obviously, it's being built in sections, little sections of road, mostly 1 mile. Similar to what we're doing over on the Hudson River Champlain Canal, where we're piecemealing it together so that eventually you have this incredible recreation way for hikers and bikers. So anyway, if it ever comes through, it comes up from, let's see.
Yeah, with Zoom.
Oh, okay, so we're coming through Hadley. I mean, we're coming through Lake Luzerne and you're gonna head up the river road, you're gonna go up through all the parts and pieces of the Hudson Special Recreation Area. And it ends up in Warrensburg. You see, this is the town of Warrensburg. And you keep going. And many of you have taken this road, of course, and it ends in a fielding, really. You're really either it's a footpath or field road or whatever. And I've never actually taken it all the way to Warrensburg, and I don't know that you can, but I think you might be able to. But anyway, very cool initiative, and it means that people, once it starts being put together and coordinated, people are going to want to come through here and bicycle from one place to the other. Now we need to start downtown and take bicycle all the way up through as far as they can, at least to their flights, and then come back. Dedicated trail would be awesome up there. So here's our destination playground, and what that means is we all decided that we need a priority project that we can build. We've talked a lot about planning projects and many things many projects require a good amount of planning before you build even a playground. But we love the idea of a playground because it says to the visitor and the new resident or potential new resident, we love kids here. We love kids. And it shows it off. Anyway, we thought probably Pavilion Park would be the best place for it. But a destination playground is typically universally accessible. It is a place where you would bring your kids over and over and over again. And people would come in from out of town. And they would come and then they'd go get ice cream and, do their thing for the day. Maybe go for a hike. But it's there's lots of different funding sources for playgrounds. But if you think about it, take some planning.
How big is it gonna be? Where's it gonna go in the park? Who's gonna do the actual building of the playground? Is that gonna be a community effort? That's a lot to think about.
I will tell you, my family will travel quite a distance to go to a good playground. Uh, it's a thing to do for the day, it's a way to get our kids out.
Yeah.
And it's a way to build your community and the connections of the people who live there.
They've done this in Warrensburg. I used to take my own little children up there and we'd have lunch at destination. Man, it was good for 2-3 hours of the day with those kids and tire them out. Go home and take a nap. Queensbury, at their elementary school has always had a beautiful playground destination. All these families come. You've seen them at Puppy Pond in Glens Falls. Anybody been there? Oh my gosh, filled with people and children.
That's what that's fun.
That's it, no, it's.
Oh. There we go.
Oh, there's just, yeah, so there's a bunch of ideas here, and I'm just saying that at some point you're gonna need a master plan for pavilion or Butler Park. Because you can't put all these parts and pieces in there unless you plan it out and plan out the walkways. I watched people at an event last summer. It's not handicap accessible there, and it really needs to be for a public park. Getting from the parking lot up to the pavilion. Work with DEC on a workable management, maintenance and response plan up there at the bear slides. I mean, what a nightmare, right? And I know the DEC is planning on coming into town. And talking about it, maybe. All right, well, so that's ongoing,
A
but,
lot of it's in Warrensburg. Parking lot, the main parking lot, that's Warrensburg, north of that. It's some of the towns. Business up in there, what they do with that. It would have to be done through Warrensburg, through access to our side.
mhm. Okay. All right. If we can keep going. Cultural and historic interpretive plan. All right, we know all the wonderful places that you have here. And all we're saying as part of a project is to tell it as a single story. You know, not just this one, this one, this one, this one, but the visitor needs to know what is the story of this place. So that's what I'm talking about there. All right. I think we can keep going. All right, the last section here is natural resources, and we're saying to prepare and submit an application to the APA and DEC for permits to use the side for silicor to treat Eurasian water milfoil in Lake Luzerne. And this is underway right now, and I think that it's appropriate at a public meeting to begin to expose people about it. This is a unique that is not permitted in the Adirondack Park as a but they will give permits for special, special projects. So there have been lakes in the Adirondacks that have used silicor and very, very successfully. I work on Saratoga Lake, and this year there is very little milfoil, unbelievable, and they use silicor. It's holding it very, very nicely there. And they were spending $150,000 a year on chemicals. So it's a terrific, I think it's a good application for here. And you'll hear more about it over the days to come. And then you're always going to have to continue the annual suction harvesting program because we cannot do the chemical all over the lake. So you're gonna have to do spot treatments and always have a part of the budget dedicated to that. Clean drain dry program, I think that needs to be
better articulated at the launch site and also up at Fourth Lake. It's not very good up there. Develop a shore owners guide for Lake Luzerne, that could be implemented at Lake Benaire and Forest Lake as well. And assess the feasibility of adopting a mandatory septic inspection program around the lakes and other waterfront properties. This map is up here and it really, you can't really see it very well here, but it is just a summary of these recommendations. Okay. All right, so what's next? So what do we do? So we have all these ideas, what do we do? Well, we're going to next meet and discuss any public comments we hear from this meeting, and then we're going to develop the final plan. The town board will hold a meeting on the final plan, and we're going to ask them to appoint an implementation committee. All right, 3 or 4 people that will come up with the town board in partnership with the town board. Pick no more than 3. Maybe it's even just one project, but select something forward, because I think this is all quite overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming. It's a lot of stuff here. So select 1 or 2 projects that are feasible, that are doable. And the town board appoints this committee, and the committee begins their work of following through with the implementation plan for each project. And I think that will, that'll work for you. And also, I didn't write it down here, but I think making the comprehensive plan implementation a dedicated town board agenda item would be amazing, because it forces people to actually, report on this initiative every month. We can make it every couple of months, whatever, but making an agenda item would force it to move forward and not lose steam. You don't want it to lose steam. Not much happened after the 2010 plan, and I think sometimes a lot of that was because it wasn't detailed enough. So I'm hoping that there's going to be enough detail in this so that it can actually, every project will have legs. But you can't do it all at once. And my suggestion would be a playground. You can see it, it's enjoyable by all, it's doable, everybody wants to be part of it, and visible, and it helps bring the community together. So, open it up to your comments. I know it's 5 after 8, but I will. Anybody have any comments or ideas or?
Great, I have a question. On the map of showing the River Road access where the park making want to go, and one of your areas, it looks like it crosses the road a little bit. So we a little bit, and now that I look in the map.
This one?
No.
No, here, that one?
It's not like the river, it looks like at one part, it's like, does it cross the road here, right in that area? Does it cross the road on the other side, or is that still on the riverbank?
No, you're off the riverbank here.
So that would cross the road on the other side.
So is that,
Yeah.
it's following the road out?
Yeah, I think it's I can follow the road here. And one of the things that you can do is, we have owned a lot of property. And also, I think that, again, people are gonna say that's unfeasible, but to put a dedicated trail along that road would be amazing. A dedicated bicycle or, and hiking trail that goes out of the, downtown region, all the way up to the bear slides. Picnic area, wow. Imagine if it was dedicated so that you didn't have the dust.
It's feasible on the road side, I don't think it's feasible on the river side.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Bought public lands property.
It just takes looking at it and piecing it together and seeing what you can do. It's flat. Essentially, so, you know.
Basically, we have a Zoom participant with their hand up, they'd like to. Wendy Sarenson, want to address her?
Hi, thank you. That's a wonderful presentation and you had some terrific ideas. I hope many of them are implemented sooner or later. I was particularly interested as a resident, summer resident anyway, of Fourth Lake. In what you said about the two different zoning divisions, or I don't know what to call it, and we're one of them is more commercial than the other. I forget what they're called officially. What are your opinions on that? We have tried for a very long time to get the whole community, the whole Fourth Lake community zoned as one piece. Have you talked to anybody, or is it just your place to make suggestions?
Oh, she could. Okay. All right. So, I have talked to the Adirondack Park Agency. You're talking about the lands, Tom, Reed.
The lands between maybe a little bit before to the Lake Luzerne side of Gailey Hill Road, all the way to that little store
Right. Well, there's two
towards
options.
Lake Bernard. And about 2/3 of the way going towards Lake Bernard, the zoning changes. And the one closer to Lake Bernard is zoned a little bit more commercially than the other one, which the residents fear.
The residents wanted to not be more.
Because it's extremely small residential, 100-year-old community, and we would not like to see it commercialized, at least from, half of it.
Well, there's certainly two things you can do. You can either ask Adirondack Park Agency to be change the zoning district, their zoning district to be consistent with the towns as rural, right? I mean, the rural district. And or you can go the other way and change the town zoning to be more restrictive as like the Adirondack Park agencies.
Yeah, we never got very far with that. I mean, I don't know who else you can appeal to besides the zoning agent in the town.
Well, if you don't do anything, there's always a conflict, right? Because they don't.
I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to understand. It's fuzzy. Can you say that again?
Well, you're always going to be in conflict if you don't resolve this issue with the zoning district of the town being different from the Adirondack Park agency.
Uh-huh.
Say that as part of the comprehensive planning committee, that, we have identified some deficiencies as well as the need specifically to update zoning, but did not necessarily provide specific recommendation. In part because it is such a complicated issue. And, really needs a much larger assessment in order to identify what needs to be zoned in different ways. But part of the goal of that update is to identify as particularly sensitive areas that maybe need to remain or be preserved as historic communities, and identify areas where there's opportunities and to remove those barriers for growth in those areas where it is deemed most responsible for there to be additional construction, development, commercial opportunities. So we specifically in this did not address very specific questions such as what should happen where.
I totally agree with you and thank you for that answer. I do think, though, that the resolution of that problem should depend not solely on the zoning officer. Thank you.
Welcome. We also have Chairman Matt College. Matt, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I have a couple of questions. I see many recommendations as far as zoning. regarding the discrepancies between the town zoning regulations and the APA. Is it the recommendation of this committee to change our zoning regulations to be consistent with APA? And does that include areas of the town which are not in the APA?
No, we're actually recommending that, that is something that the effort for updating the zoning ordinance, that it be part of that effort.
Okay, and I am the first person to agree that our zoning needs revision. But I see it is a major undertaking and I see no identification of funding for that. So what is the resolution?
There's funding through the Smart Growth Program, Department of State, and I actually applied for the town for that money, and the town lost by 1 point. And when I went for a debriefing with them, they basically said they wanted to see this effort finished before they fund the zoning update. So it's 90% funded.
So what you just said to me was that there is no funding.
No.
No, I said there's funding, it would go through this year, 2023 of the consolidated funding application in July.
Would that be the board that does that or a special committee?
A special committee, made up of the planning board chairman, the zoning board chairman, and others that would, yeah. And they would hire a consultant to help guide them through that process. It's just.
Do you have any concept as to the amount of that funding and what this entails? And who will be doing it?
Most of the funds for that kind of a planning effort are about $50,000. The program was not well funded. So it rarely did a grant amount go above 50,000. But I'm sure the supervisor will have me refile the grant after this effort's over this summer.
Well, I appreciate your efforts. I do not see it happening with that funding. I agree that it needs to be done, but I am not optimistic.
So I've seen a couple of successful grant applications for zoning regulations and zoning updates. And, I think the feedback that Tracy's saying that she got is that, according to New York State Department of State, that your comprehensive plan needs to be your guiding document and provide a legal justification for your zoning regulations. So while in process of conducting that comprehensive planning, they were reluctant to study and it's to fund it in this round. And if you lost by 1 point and didn't necessarily have a comprehensive plan to back that up, we can remain hopeful for future funding opportunities, as well as those funding opportunities through the Smart Growth DEC Smart Growth Grant.
And it can be funded by the town. That's certainly an option, is for the town to fund that kind of effort. And if it's self-funded, you don't have the state breathing over you and their timetable and everything. It really becomes your own effort.
And in terms of who would do it, I would imagine for a contract of that size, you probably need to procure for a vendor, is that right?
Yeah, for that amount. Yeah.
Has the town identified funding for such an operation?
I don't know. At this point, I don't know that has happened. I think they're waiting for this effort to be over.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So you wrote that grant for us, and there was a lot of grants mentioned out there available to us. Who would write all the additional grant applications going forward? Would that be somebody the town would have to hire to write the grant, or do we do it in-house?
Well, I don't think you can do it in-house, but I am the town's grant writer.
Okay.
So typically, if we decide on a grant to go after, we have a good chance then the town would hire me to do that. And I've done it many times. We got an aquatic invasive species grant for Lake Luzerne, many different grants here, but. Forgot what I was gonna say.
You just did mention several of them that are available to us.
Yeah. There are several, the one I'm talking about, is 90% grant, 10% match. So obviously, that is a great grant, right? But it also makes it highly competitive. And, all the towns go after these grants. So they're looking for any way to put you over here, you know, because they can only fund so many.
And because almost, it's pretty much no such thing as a grant that doesn't require some form of matching dollars, meaning that your community needs to put forth some of its own money. What we would through this process, what I aim to do and through your comprehensive plan committee is identify your priorities, because you can't do everything all at the same time. Because then you'd just be outlaying funds and you'd have more outcome coming in, and it's, you know, you need to be strategic about it. Like, you're not going to do a, you know, water line replacement, but, you know, after you've done your sidewalks, when you're gonna have to tear them all up and then put them in. So, you know, part of our process will be to prioritize, like, you should do this first because it has the greatest impact. And, you know, you should do this first because critical path, you need to do this before you do this, or you're gonna end up duplicating your work. So it would certainly be no recommendation of ours that you go through for all of these things at the same time, but you define what your priorities are. And, you know, part of the recommendation that Tracy has about going after a playground is quite a bit of funding opportunities out there, particularly from private funding sources, such as private foundations, and also success breeds success. So do something, achieve something, show that your comprehensive plan is achieving a goal, and then that'll create momentum to push it forward, because this isn't meant to be accomplished in 1 or 2 or even 3 years. This is, you know, we aim municipalities' best practices to do it every 10 years. So this is a long range plan. It's not something you have to do all.
No, I agree. If the grants are out there. I don't want to say easy grants to get, but you have a more of an advantage to get them, and there's something visible instantly for the people in the community to see that you're improving. You're going forward.
Thank you. Jean?
A lot of people have to understand about grants. Most of them think you just apply for it, you get it. We worked on a couple of grants like water. We helped us on that. We've lost 3 years in a row with a $2.2 million to do new water lines. And what happens, each grant gets points to certain things. One of our, I won't say it, I'm not saying it derogatory, but one of our points are, we are a third community of just summer people. And that puts those points lower on the bottom, even though that's where most of the water lines we work on. So it's really confusing with grants. And like now we try to get another grant. We just can't get the cooperation of the people. It was sent out to the people, a survey. It's an income survey. Now it's tough for everybody to say how much of their income they make, but it's not, we don't want to know what you make. It is necessary for the grant to equalize what they're going to give you the grant for. And we're 10 or 15 more people have to file out that thing for us to apply it. So there's a lot of things that people don't understand about grants. There's a lot of restrictions. And you know, I know we have a great board and we work hard on this, but there's a lot of all your here is beautiful. But the one problem when you get to sewers, it's not good. Like Luzerne, you have to spend $100 million because it's all rock downtown where we want it. I mean, we went through all this quite a few times. So there's certain things, manufacturing want to come in, but the first thing they look at is for sewers and water. Not everybody gets water in the way of time. So it's a funny community we're in. I mean, not funny, laugh at situations, you know, even 9N. it'd be great if we could expand the road and have bike trails on both sides of the road, it belongs to the state. And when they pay, they only pay what they want to pay, and we try to get them to do extra. So there's a lot, not to go into, but like some of the small projects, the park, dog park is a big thing. Another thing, we're getting a lot of things on, not tennis, what's
Pickleball.
Pickleball. So we're working on that right now, to change maybe a couple of courses, to pickleball courts, make people happy and enjoy the time with it.
Nice.
But, there's a lot that goes into these grants. I mean, Tracy, I mean, we tried for a lot of years, and we moved out because of points. You know, it's a system, and, I don't, sometimes you see like Pag County Road, we just got a $10 million grant. One of the senators, and I was up home the next day, you know, bugging about it. You know, but little towns struggle to get these grants. They go to the more population is, and they feel they get their money's worth out of building up other populations.
They don't see you as needy. They just don't see you as needy.
Yeah, right.
And so that's also an issue.
We're fortunate, there are people that are regular everyday people, and we do have a good amount of people that are a little wealthier and they're building more $1 million houses around here than we've ever had. So it gets to hurt you one way or another sometimes, so it's not that we don't do it. Casey and I just called you the other day, we're gonna start working again. Because now water grants are coming out, but there's so many restrictions, and we got half the town that's in the APA and the other half is not, so it's, the APA has a big thumb on that stuff. Unfortunately,
They sure do.
I'm just trying to, you know, not that I'm making excuses, but I'm just trying to generalize the people that it's not that easy. We're trying to work on the dam, and all of a sudden we find regulations that we never knew we had to do, so we're still working on it, but there's a lot to go into grants, and this whole thing here, I'm sitting here saying, well, that's great, but we probably need about $100 million to do half of what you got on that board. You know, reasonable, you know, especially when it comes, look at paving today, you know, you're talking $100,000 a mile.
That's cheap.
So, you know, that's probably even cheap too, but you know, it's
only going up.
yeah, it's going up.
Yeah. And up and up.
Mr. Merlin, what survey are you talking about that you asked for the income of the residents?
That's a company we just have,
Is that something that the residents got emailed to them or they got mailed to them?
people got mail, they were in the water.
Anybody in the water district.
It's the state now is gonna make us check the water line for lead. So, you know,
And the part of the cost that from the curb cock into your house.
But if you're not in the water.
But
district.
years ago, it was fixed with lead.
I own the trailer park and we never got it for the trailer park. Okay, I'd be happy to throw it out and you need another playground, but apply to business.
I could get a list of everybody they sent to. I know we sent it out to a couple
I
of
can
people.
have it, I can keep going.
It's surprising. The grants we've lost by this much.
Yeah.
Okay, 5, 6 years ago, the district did a survey on replacing the water line, which included the heights all the way up to Healy Hill and all downtown. $3 million. The grant now, what we're doing, apply for it. We're going to get from 9M down into the village, down to the Elms, and up to the school. At $7 million, they estimate the cost that. 5 years ago, it was $3 million to do the whole town.
Yeah, so it's.
And we lost by $5 and some cents. Something like that.
And we can borrow money, and we.
Financially, the town's in good
Shape
shape.
linear, but it's talking, well, we needed money to do water lines. We need 3.5 million, and it averaged out to be, I think, $259 a taxpayer.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot to be taxing taxpayers, you know, and it's not easy decisions to make. So it's not just that, hey, you know, it's a great speech, this one's doing it, that one's doing it. Our, right behind here, we worked on for 2 years to get senior housing, 2 buildings, 4 apartments in each. It wound up to be $250,000 each apartment. So, you know, you're talking one building, $1 million to do.
Still cheap.
And it's tough, believe me, we do try, but it's tough. We're in a strange little, you know.
It may be cheap, but you gotta come up with money
Yeah.
for this time. You gotta put that on burden on the taxpayer.
I know what I mean to
And
say.
they don't
that
like
it's-
that.
what I mean to say that is cheap is that $250,000 to build a building is, by today's standards, a relatively.
No, that's per unit.
Per unit,
Unit inside the 4-unit building, $4 million.
Per unit.
that's a lot.
Yeah. So that's 4
And it was
units.
given them the property because we're
Because you fall under the situation. Yes. Yeah, we own. I'll tell you, that would be the fantastic deal of the year.
Yeah, that's what the thought process. You know, somebody wants to do that, let me know.
You go home, talk to your hubby.
I mean, there are alternatives to that as well, so.
There's a lot of good points that you
Yeah.
people did bring up.
Well,
You
we're
worked
just
hard on this.
Trying to let you know that it's not
Okay.
just easy to go on the phone and look for a grant for 25,000 or.
But we could start small,
50,000.
like, if you put a play, I know, I'm all for the youth commission and the youth in this community, you put a playground down there by the lake. You got people coming. They're gonna be coming, you put those food trucks there.
Well, we got food trucks are on the way.
You're gonna Smile on people's faces, they're gonna come
Yeah,
here.
that's on the park, so that it's another one I get going.
We need kids, Gene, we need kids in this community,
It's kind of funny, just last year.
No more. Yeah.
We're supposed to have put a proposal together on a playground down there. And things happen and it didn't get achieved. We're very happy. I know I am. I can't speak for the board. A nice playground area for the kids, most definitely.
Yeah, people, you'll put smiles on people's faces, they're gonna come here.
That the same situation with the school card with the cardboard boats. That has to be upgraded more and get more people involved in that. There's a lot of things that we used to do many years ago. That for some reason, times have changed, I realize that. But I wish we could bring some of them back. We used to have street dances here on a Saturday night, square dancing on a Friday night. They used to block the streets off in town.
You're talking about it.
Before you came.
I know.
Yeah,
Well, you know, we can look at the expense side and
But you
bring
wanna
on
know
hands how
something?
much it costs, but I think that the point of all this is to look then at the incoming funds that all these improvements might bring. You know,
That's all it is.
and, even the apartments, I mean, people are gonna pay rent, it might be minimal, but you're gonna get some of that millions of dollars back in rent. You know, so that's something I think that we have to keep in mind, that it's not all expense, it's gonna hopefully bring some income in
And housing,
for everybody.
problems with housing is happening everywhere. You've read about it.
Expensive, no
And
matter
trying
where you
to
go.
sort out what to do is, so we're, you know, it's on our list.
I don't know how many people are here. I can remember back as far as I can. We used to have a movie theater in town. We had a playhouse. that put on things. Okay, plays, actual plays. We had a game room down in town. With machines in it where the kids could hang out. You had the triangle. These are all things once people got used to, not just the townspeople, would come back and say, I want to rent a place here. Okay, because they got a lot of things for grown-ups as well as children.
Okay, and somebody, oh, yes,
Sorry, I just want to say, my name is Dave Moore, I'm Adirondack Adventure Center up the road, so we do a lot of the tubing and stuff, which is. I just wanted to voice my support for some of the things that you guys put in here. One of the things that I, for a long time, thought was a great idea, was a viewing platform by Rockwell Falls and kind of extending that trail up to that area. And obviously, I'm particularly interested in this, the map you have in front of me. I understand that you guys have been doing this for a long time, and maybe I'm naive about it, but when I see stuff like this, I get excited, as a younger person in the community who has young kids that are here. I own businesses that take advantage of the resources in the community. I do a lot of traveling around the country, around the world, to a lot of adventure-oriented communities. And one of the places that I went to, it's a bigger community just outside of Denver, Golden, Colorado. That I find a lot of similarities between Luzerne and Golden, and they really embrace basically what's already in front of the community that I think Luzerne has taken advantage of to a certain extent, but hasn't fully embraced. You said in your presentation, not a lot of communities have two rivers that connect in such a beautiful way. Right there where there's recreation that can mix with all the other stuff we have going on. So close to a number of different cities and stuff like that. There's a reason why people come here. And I really believe if we continue to enhance and pursue some of these projects, it would be great for the community. Not saying that it's not going to be a challenge, but something that should definitely be pursued. Of course.
thank you. Jim?
One thing for me that might help JCP to assign a ballpark price to some of the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Then during the priority process, the thinking of which one is the higher priority over one, they change it a little bit. Something that's only $5
because it costs.
might be pushed up on the priority list because it's something that could be done fairly quickly.
Right, gotcha. All right, I will do that.
Updating the zoning, Jim.
Mhm.
We could probably assign a ballpark number that would be fairly accurate
Mhm.
for that. Be a lot easier to update.
Okay,
Just a quick idea that hearing Dave speak and something you said earlier, the corridor coming in from the north. That little park that you mentioned over there is beautiful, but you don't see it because speed limit goes up to 55. You're by it before you can stop. Okay, so how about putting it a little further down the road, like right across from the park? We're at Adirondack Adventure. People see that. They see the store, they see all that.
Mhm.
Might be a great place for it. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, John.
So I'm on the board with Tracy, and one of the reasons we like the park for the kids is because I think would be the least expensive that the town could do. Even if you get a grant for half the money, there's such a thing called something like that, which other towns have done, sweat equity, where participate, help finish the project. It's on town property. You're not gonna go out and buy the property or anything. You got the video where they have the concert, which you guys are the concert back. We're bringing in food trucks.
Yep.
Hopefully with the food trucks there and the concert and playground, there's gonna be some restaurateurs. They're gonna say, hey, this town's, maybe I should put a restaurant in this town because it's happened during the summer. And I think, based on what you told us, the private, it's like a private grant, where you don't necessarily have to go to the state.
Mhm.
And it's at least 50% or more, I'm not sure.
Was that the National Grid?
There was a National Grid one, there was Charlie Wood Foundation.
Well, National Grid would be perfect.
So the Blue Foundation grants were announced today in today's Post Star, and you'll see like a ton of them, really large ones, and then most of them are in the 15,000 range. So
So nothing, we have their facilities here, they don't take packets or anything, it's a great facility. But the money that they gave out to other communities, nothing like. Really, you read the article. I mean, it's funding the all in the wood, but nothing else in the libraries or any of that stuff. Who figured that out? I don't know.
I don't know.
I just wanted to agree with John. I think the playground idea is a fantastic idea to get the ball rolling because of the cost. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to kind of throw out the idea for the playground to go that route when it comes to designing the playground and things like that, to incorporate whatever theming we want for the town. You know, whether it be adventure by incorporating maybe a small rock wall or something like that into the playground, or other things that the community has to offer, the rodeo, you know, some sort of, I don't know, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but something to really
Thank
show
you.
people what the town has to offer.
Thank you.
There's handouts there if you'd like to take, and there's a comment sheet, yeah, attached.
If there's a thing that I came away from our walk with and some of our assessments, the bottom line would be consistency. You know, consistency in branding, consistency in theme, consistency in what you're saying about your community and how you feel about it. So I love that idea. In fact, we were just talking about a park in town of Easton, and we're gonna get a bunch of cows and, you know, little rocker things and stuff like that. So certainly something that matches the atmosphere and doesn't necessarily have to stick out as being, you know, the what's the name of that brand, the red cart with the yellow pieces on it.
The only other thing I would suggest with the playground is some lighting. I think it's dark, you know, and like, I know you're not gonna have your kids ride in the playground and 9 o'clock at night, but during the concerts, you know, they go till 8:30, so it does get dark. And so some kind of lighting in there, but which I don't know if we could bring into a kind of grant, but it's definitely a dark area right there. So we would definitely need something like that. Okay.
Our participants on Zoom would like to know if there's an email address or somewhere they can send written comments to.
I just sent it, did you send it through the chat for me?
You,
Might have been just to that one person, maybe it's like for everybody.
yeah, let me get you that.
We want to ask if we have a Zoom participant that wants to play anything. I think somebody's trying to chime in right now. That's what
Is there a Zoom participant that wants to make a comment?
demand.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to express the appreciation for the work that this committee has done. I worked on the similar committee on the prior time, and it's a lot of work. I appreciate that. One comment that was made already about the challenges of building the historic downtown area with the rock ledge and the sewer is probably the biggest detriment to building a downtown historic area that could support business, restaurants, and improvements to homes. And I'm not sure the answer to that, but that was the same problem we had back then. The second comment I'd like to make is that Luzerne is unique in the efforts of Mr. Merlino, who has brought amazing amount of infrastructure and buildings and town hall you're sitting in to the town, which never would have happened without amazing amount of work and ingenuity to sell bowling shoes and everything else. So he should be commended for that. The third one is a comment, and that is regarding the senior housing and also your idea of Hudson Headwaters. I wonder if they might be combined into some kind of small regional clinic particularly with the needs of the seniors, and that might get them involved in helping support that project and make it a bit of more of than just housing or health, if it was combined in some way for seniors of the Adirondack. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You got him down. All right, I think, yeah.
One more small one. I used to be an avid bicycler. And back in the day, there used to be bicycles all over this. All summer long. They were coming over the mountain, they'd come here, they'd stop, they'd have something. And about 12 years ago, the roads got so bad that I had to give it up. It was. So I was wondering, and I know you've got to turn a bunch of people into that because. Like county in the state. But yeah, I think if we can do something, if you can get some people to come back to make this a bicycle center.
I like that idea, and I think that we could tie it into the Route 9 corridor study. And when I'm always walking downtown, I watch them come off the bike trail. They have no idea what to do. That village has abandoned these poor people, but there are many long distance bicyclists who get off and they go towards Lake Luzerne. It's not good. It's not healthy to do that, right? It's really dangerous, but what a wonderful piece that would be if we could bring it all the way from Lake George at the intersection with Route 9. Bring it all the way over would be amazing. Dedicated.
And that's part of adopting that complete streets approach is, even if you aren't going to have sidewalks on a street, to make sure that you have sufficient shoulder space so that you can comfortably ride on the road. Similar to what happened near Saratoga Battlefield on Route 4. They expanded those and now what they 4 to 6 feet.
Yeah.
They're fairly wide and, it's a 55-mile-per-hour road. So it's, still reasonably dangerous, but at least that you have sufficient distance.
East River Drive would be a good place. It's an alternative to go from one place to another without going. But again, it's dangerous. All right, thank you, everybody. There are handouts back here, and there's a comment sheet on the back with my email and the town's address if you want to send comments. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate your time.